very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom. This is the CBC Evening News. Prime Minister Frendel Stuart has paid a glowing tribute to the late Sir Frederick Smith. Speaking in Parliament, the Prime Minister said Sir Frederick was a great Barbadian who contributed selflessly to this nation and others. Mr. Stuart also said Sir Frederick distinguished himself as the island's first Attorney General, with many important pieces of legislation being passed during his tenure.
When Barbados joined the International Monetary Fund, legislation had to be brought here. It was brought here during his incumbency. When the Parks and Beaches Commission, now the National Conservation Commission, was established, it was during the incumbency of Frederick Smith as Attorney General. The National Insurance and Social Security Act was passed during his incumbency. And there are other pieces of legislation to which one can point that reflect his character and his contribution as Attorney General of Barbados.
The Prime Minister also described Sir Frederick as a man who was not afraid to challenge authority, but who did so without harboring feelings of malice or hatred.
His whole personality was effectively sealed off from any encroachment by malice or hate or vengeance. In fact, in the book he makes very clear that these are very useless emotions, that harboring grudges and walking around with bitterness and so on, really a waste of time. And in fact, that those persons who are prisoners of bitterness and prisoners of revenge and prisoners of hate are really victims. The persons whom they hate are really the winners.
Budget Day is next Tuesday. The financial statement and budgetary proposals will be delivered by Minister of Finance Chris Sinclair from 4 p.m. The announcement was made in the House of Assembly this afternoon, shortly before today's sitting was adjourned. We'll have more from Parliament in a moment, but now to this story. Doctors at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital are investigating whether the birth defects in 2 newborn babies are linked to the Zika virus. This was revealed by Minister of Health John Boyce during a press conference. Minister Boyce says the babies were born with microcephaly, a birth defect in which a baby's head is smaller than expected when compared with babies of the same sex and age. Microcephaly is a common characteristic of babies with Zika. However, he says there was no suspicion of Zika before the 2 babies were born.
Pregnant women suspected or confirmed with Zika infection are monitored at the high-risk antenatal clinic at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And these 2 cases of microcephaly were not among those being monitored. Currently, 14 pregnant women have been identified with the Zika virus. Of these, 7 have given birth, and there were no obvious birth defects detected in those babies.
Minister Boyce says in previous times there have been cases of microcephaly, though unrelated to Zika.
On average, 2 to 3 babies are born with microcephaly every year, unrelated to Zika in Barbados. To date, there has been no increase in the number of newborns with microcephaly in Barbados. Additionally, no children born to mothers who tested positive for Zika have been diagnosed with microcephaly.
Consultant pediatrician Dr. Gillian Birchwood explained how the doctors at the QEH are conducting the investigation.
So whenever we have babies born with microcephaly, there are many different potential causes, and so we're going to be investigating, casting a wide net. So the investigations consist of radiological investigations where we'll be imaging the baby's brains to see whether everything appears to be normal anatomically, and there are also blood investigations which will help us to search for things like infectious causes, metabolic derangements and chromosomal abnormalities.
In other health news now, Minister Boyce says government has adopted a proactive approach to managing health care, recognizing prevention is better and far cheaper than treatment. He made the point while addressing the Barbados Food Law and Industry Conference at the Lloyd Erskine Sandiford Centre. The conference is intended to help food and agricultural businesses stay up to date with changing legal and regulatory standards within the industry. Stressing the importance of maintaining healthy lifestyles, Minister Boyce said this is particularly relevant as it relates to the cost of treatment for chronic non-communicable diseases.
Managing health care for any country is a significant challenge. However, the cost of treatment for non-communicable diseases far outweigh the cost of the prevention programs. Therefore, as a nation, we have placed emphasis on the education of Barbadians and developed health promotion to support healthy lifestyles. Government has given priority to health because we recognize that the country's development and sustainability is determined by the health and general well-being of our people.
Well, back to Parliament now. Minister of Commerce Donville Innes says Barbadians can take a lot from the life of the late Sir Frederick Sleepy Smith. In his tribute, Mr. Innes said Sir Frederick always believed in the island, and one of his greatest achievements was serving as the first Attorney General of an independent Barbados. He says politicians could emulate Sir Frederick, as he often separated political matters in the best interest of the country.
Parliament today in 2016 is much richer for the contribution of Frederick Gladstone Smith. He was a formidable debater in his own style, not one known for long, flowery speeches and such like very simple words, but he got his point over. He offended some people. I don't know they sought to offend people, but perhaps that is the reason why he may not have gotten much further than he got. But he took a stance, and he was always prepared to give you his advice, not to tell you what he thought you wanted to hear, but what he truly believed in.
Opposition leader Mia Motley lauded Sir Frederick for demonstrating Christian values and speaking his mind regardless of those he offended.
It is his ability to reflect the Christian values which he preached that stood out most for me. It is true that he spoke his mind all the time. Some liked it, some didn't like it. I am sure that when, before the last election, he said, as the former first president of the Democratic Labour Party, that if this government is not performing, you should vote them out. There are members on the other side who would have said, what is he saying? But that is how he felt.
A man who generously shared his wealth of knowledge with people, regardless of their political or social background. That's how the late Sir Frederick Smith is remembered by MP for St. George North, Glyne Clark. The opposition MP says Sir Frederick never lost the common touch.
This man was indeed a person that all the ordinary persons within our community can associate it with. As he walked through British Street, British Town, walking in his constituency, walking through Barbados, he was the same man, even though he had acquired the status of parliamentarian as judge. And that is indeed important for us to recognize.
Sir Frederick Smith's recording of his memoirs is part of his contribution to Barbados. This view was shared by Tourism Minister Richard Seeley as he paid tribute to Sir Frederick in Parliament today. He said Sir Frederick stated his position on the island becoming a nation state in his book, Dreaming a Nation.
Watching, indeed, not only Barbados, but the Caribbean being transformed, the English-speaking Caribbean, from a collection of British possessions to a series of sovereign nations, with a few colonies in between. But the book is as riveting and enthralling to read as it is having a conversation with Sir Frederick, or Sleepy, as everyone, of course, used to refer to him as. And I would associate with the view that it should be compulsory reading for anyone in public life.
More Barbadians should follow Sir Frederick's example and document their life stories. This advice has come from Minister of Culture Stephen Lashley. He says Sir Frederick's book, entitled Dreaming a Nation, allows people to get an insight into his life and accomplishments. Mr. Lashley is also pleased that Sir Frederick will be included in an upcoming docudrama to be released in November.
And we should find time to write our version of what has happened. I believe some of the persons, some of the characters that we find in the book Dreaming a Nation would not themselves have had an opportunity to document their side of the story. Of course, Sir Frederick had been able to give his version of what has happened during that time in his life. And therefore, I believe that that's a good example to follow.
Renaming a secondary school after Sir Frederick Smith was an honor he deserved and appreciated. This observation from Education Minister Ronald Jones. He says the appreciation was evident at the renaming of St. James Secondary to the Frederick Smith Secondary.
This was a man genuine in his contribution. I saw a few tears, these little drops that sometimes come from men who don't want to cry, coming down his face. And he's saying to the audience assembled there that he's had several recognitions in his life, but the one which he was most proud of was this school of just around 1,000 children being named after him.
Opposition MP Edmund Hinkson has described the late Sir Frederick Smith as a legend of a man and a political giant. He says Sir Frederick made several selfless contributions in his public careers in Barbados and abroad without seeking rewards.
You know, those were the days when people primarily served at political level for unselfishly to make a contribution to their country's development and not to try to get the most that they could out of politics, whether in terms of salary or benefits or remuneration or whatever. That was when politicians served with their heart and soul.
Well, there's more news just ahead. Stay with us.
Don't let your data experience slow you down. Step up to Digicel, Barbados' fastest 4G network, more than twice as fast as the slow network. Get more with Digicel. Digicel, the fastest 4G network in Barbados. Dial *153# to sign up to Digicel today.
So many wonderful places to see and things to do. And if you've never traveled on Liat through the Caribbean, now is your chance. To get you started, Liat is offering the Genesis with the lowest fares ever for first-time Liat passengers. Log on to genesis.liat.com and register as a first-time traveler, and we will send you the best fare ever. Fares as low as $40 plus tax. So register now. Go to genesis.liat.com. Liat's Genesis, where your travel addiction begins.
Barbados now has another gateway into the potentially lucrative South American market. At the same time, it will be sharing its expertise in an area in which it has done well. This was revealed when the inaugural flight of Surinamese airline Fly Always touched down at the Grantley Adams International Airport this afternoon. Barbados has welcomed a new regional airline, the first since Redjet stopped flying in 2011. It's also the first direct flight to the potentially lucrative Guyana market since the low-budget airline stopped operating 5 years ago.
So we have the whole South American area opened up, and Guyana has also been a significant source market for us. I mean, last year we would have welcomed 11,151 visitors from Guyana to Barbados, and that was up from 2014, 12% more than 2014, and that was without a direct link.
Parliamentary Secretary in the Tourism Ministry, Senator Irene Sandiford Garner, says Fly Always has been operating charter flights to Barbados in the last few years, and it has taken about 2 years to finalize the commercial flight agreement. However, she adds that relations between Barbados and Suriname will go beyond air links.
But we have agreed that we would assist them with tourism legislation, certain areas of administration that they need assistance with, we have agreed to formalize the assistance between the two countries. So yes, they've had discussions with us, and we have agreed to assist them in those areas.
Meantime, Chief Executive Officer of Fly Always Airline, Armashand Jaw, says the main purpose behind the flights is to connect the Guyanas with Barbados. The CEO adds that the trial flights have had loads of about 80% both ways, and he says the airline has a good safety record. Well, police are investigating an accident at Country Road, St. Michael, where a man was struck by a car. He was struck at about 3:30 near the traffic lights. The man, who appeared to be unconscious at first, was eventually helped into a police vehicle around 4 o'clock after no ambulance had arrived. CBC News understands he was being assessed at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital late this afternoon. A number of resolutions will be up for discussion by the Democratic Labour Party in its upcoming annual conference. Scheduled for August 13th, 14th and 21st, the conference will be held under the theme Journey to 50 from Colony to Nationhood. General Secretary George Pilgrim says the opposition Barbados Labour Party's refusal to support the increase of retirement age for the posts of Director of Public Prosecutions and Auditor General are among matters to be addressed.
Finally, we have a resolution coming from the party's branches condemning the opposition on the recent abstention from the support in Parliament to the necessary act which was needed to be amended to include the two critical posts, the Deputy Public Prosecutor and the Auditor General, in the extension of the office to the age 67.
The highlight of the conference will be Prime Minister Fandel Stewart's address on August 21st, which will be streamed live via the DLP's website. The party will also issue ID cards to members for the first time in history during the conference. Mr. Pilgrim says the innovation is the first step towards electronic management of their membership, which has been growing.
We accept, we know what the names of the members are, but we will not know what they look like in the future. So the party has agreed to capture the images of its people and store them for generations to come. This single act will move the party in a direction where we embrace the need to modernize and how we treat to the membership.
President of the Barbados Union of Teachers, Pedro Shepherd, says he will not be supporting the placement of cameras in classrooms. Instead, he suggests they should be installed around the school's compound.
We are not going to support cameras to see what teachers are doing or what even students are doing to some extent. We can support the idea of putting cameras in schools to scan the perimeter of schools so you can monitor those who come onto school compounds during school time and outside of school hours, because we have a lot of schools that are being broken into on weekends and vacation periods and so on. But to actually have them in the classroom or on the corridors monitoring children, I'm saying that is something that the Barbados Union of Teachers will have to take a longer look at.
Mr. Shepherd spoke to CBC as union members took to the streets for a second day to protest the docking of teachers' pay by the Ministry of Education. The BUT head is again pleading with the ministry to overturn the decision. Mr. Shepherd says the union will be giving the ministry until September 1st to restore the deducted amounts. However, he says the union is willing to discuss the matter.
If they want us to meet and have discussion, we can meet, because we would want again to say to the ministry that there have been a number of discrepancies in the docking. To date, there are some persons who attended the meetings who have not had their pay docked. There are some who we thought the docking was to be done in May. Apparently it went May, June, and we have persons whose pay was also docked in July.
The salaries of several teachers were docked after they attended union meetings on April 29th and May 24th. Well, just ahead, a look at some of the stories from around the region.